Ooh, a night at the opera. How cultured. Who's this weird wanker going on the stage?
I was a brigadier in Seville, betrothed to my sweetheart Michaela, when I met Carmen.
I'm very pleased for you. Well, I was a broadcaster and occasional entertainer when I met Carmen.
Can you resist her?
Oh no, I can't!
Here comes the note, Dukey.
That was beautiful, Irene.
Yeah, Dukey, why am I singing this opera stuff anyway?
Well, that's from the opera Carmen, and Carmen Lynch is one of our two guests on this episode of the Dukey radio show.
Oh.
And the other guest, the lovely John Reynolds, I couldn't find an opera named John or Reynolds.
Oh, right, so Carmen, is she the funny one?
Yes.
And he's the unky one with that unky voice.
Oh, he's hunky and has a hunky voice, yes.
Oh, gotcha, okay. So, do you like that note then, Dukey?
Love the note.
I'll sing it again then for you.
Go for it.
Bam, 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 bada, bam.
It's the Dukey Radio Show. Hello, 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 hello. With me in the studio, Sylvia Silversmith.
Hello, everyone.
And Marsha MacDonald.
Yeah, what up, peeps?
You sound a bit shell-shocked.
Yeah, I'm kind of swooning here.
You're swooning.
Yeah.
I know I'm looking good today.
Yeah, no, Dukey. Yeah, you know that's not why I'm swooning. I don't swoon often.
This is true.
I don't swoon often.
And also, you're in the vagina business as well, so...
Well, Dukey, no, not that.
My charm simply cannot make you move to the other side.
I'm swooning over your guest this week, Dukey. I'm just the biggest disappointment of my life that I couldn't meet her in the studio.
Where were you?
I was at work. Dukey.
Have you heard of the phrase, pulling a sickie?
Yeah, no, I know. I could have, but you've showed me the cushion that had the honor of having her rear end on it, and I'm taking it from you. I'm going to have it bronzed.
You're going to bronze Carmen's cushion.
I'm going to bronze her cushion, Dukey. You know, well, when we saw her in Edinburgh, I told her I loved her twice.
In fact, actually, you said, I love you so hard.
Oh, did I? Yeah, see, you know, she's just a joy and a delight. You know what I mean? She's a joy and a delight. She's funny, she's hilarious, she's dark, and she seems like a nice person, and I think she's amazing.
A thing of beauty and a Keats reference forever.
Is it a Keats reference?
Yes, a thing of beauty and a joy forever.
Oh, is that... see,
Yes.
now I'm just showing how plebby I am.
Oh, give over.
Dukey, I have to say, I was very sorry not to be here either.
And where were you?
Well, I was at work too, Dukey.
Right.
So,
Haven't you heard of the phrase?
Yeah, no,
pulling a
I
sickie?
know, Dukey.
Oh, the Protestant work ethic. It's strong in you
it's pretty
two.
strong in the two of us. And Dukey, your other guest who was on with Carmen, you said his name is John Reynolds.
Yes.
Now, I'm doing a little swoony for him, even though I didn't meet him.
So am I. Lovely, lovely man.
Isn't that voice, Dukey? I just heard a little bit of the recording, and that voice. Dukey, I don't think I can listen to the entire podcast when it's broadcast, because I, too, love the wonderful and delicious Carmen, who's delicious. And his voice is just unsurpassed. I mean, it's like butterscotch.
Right.
So
you're swooning as well.
I'm swooning,
well,
Dukey. So we're all a swoon here in the studio over the two guests. Dukey, you were pretty nervous, I hear, beforehand.
This is true. I have mega respect and love for Carmen, and it was a real honour to have her and her partner in crime, in many different crimes, her other half, John Reynolds, in the studio. They did not disappoint, but I also didn't want to disappoint, so I got a bit nervous.
I heard you had kind of what you Brits call a dicky tummy.
I did.
You did?
Yes.
So basically, Carmen and John gave you the shits.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, Dukey?
Yes, I blame them. I blame them for my dodgy tummy.
Is that the first time you've ever had the shits from having some pretty illustrious guests on the show?
No.
No, yeah, I bet a lot of other people are giving you the shits.
Yes, for different reasons, though.
For various different... You get some illustrious guests, Dukey.
Yes, this time it really, really meant the
What an
world
honor.
to me.
What
And the
an
world to
honor.
my guts.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But, you know, wow, what an honor. What an honor.
And an hour before the duo turned up, I had bits of equipment seize up on me.
Oh, God, that's
Yes.
even worse.
So I had to put stuff together with gaffer tape in order to make it work pretty much. So
poor
while I was
Dukey.
having a chat with them, I was really mindful of whether or not all my equipment was still working. And no, I'm not referring to my guts.
Dukey, I have to say, I've never seen the cushions on the Dukey Radio Show studio sofas so plump.
Yes,
They're very plumped.
I did some plumping.
You did some plumping.
Yeah, some plumping was
Lots
done.
of cleaning and plumping going on.
Yes.
And they were just as wonderful as you knew that they would be.
Oh, my word, so lovely. It felt like I'd known them for years and years and years. Very much on the same page in terms of humour and outlook.
Dukey, you're so lucky. Dukey, you know, when we were in Edinburgh, she gave me one of her pens.
Yes, which is still going strong.
Yeah, and that pen that says "Hold Me" on it saw me through a really bad day. I was having a really bad day at work. I think it was like in December. And I had that pen out on my desk. And just every time I looked at it, it cheered me up. And then, but the other week, what happened was somebody at work asked me to borrow a pen, and I was kind of stressing out about something, and I didn't realize. I just said, "Oh yeah, help yourself" at my pen bag, and they took the Carmen pen. And when I noticed, I about crapped myself, and I went chasing after that person like a rabid dog after a motorcycle. Is that a thing? It is now.
It is now, yes.
And I got the pen back.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, normally, you don't mind. Like if it's just like a Bic, who cares?
An ordinary biro pen. There
Yeah.
are other pen
There are
manufacturers.
other pens, but that one, I was like, yeah, I will not let that happen again. Let me just tell you that.
Perhaps that's what that phrase really means. Not just hold me, but hold on to me.
Well, exactly, Dukey. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, we're all kind of fangirls and boys in this studio, aren't we?
Mark Maron with the president of the USA. Nothing on us having Carmen. and John in the
Carmen
studio.
and John. I mean, I looked up, he's a cartoonist.
Yes, and a writer. He's a Renaissance man.
Pretty amazing stuff there
A
from what I
Renaissance
saw.
person.
Yeah, I mean, my God. Dukey, you're very lucky. Could you please warn us next time? I mean, I think we should go back in time so you can warn Martha and I so that we could do the old, I think I'm going to be sick.
So much for your Protestant work ethic.
Well, when it comes to Carmen and Carmen's partner in crime, as you call him, there is no Protestant work ethic that's strong enough. Because I would have much rather met them than been at work.
So the interview that we're just about to hear,
Yes.
if you, Marsha, and I'm pointing to you right now, Sylvia,
yes.
suddenly appear, it means that time travel is possible.
I wish. I hope so, Dukey. If you can make that happen, That would be a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Let me see if I can find a flex capacitor.
My name is Carmen Lynch, and my favorite word is knob. I love knob because our knob is so clean and your knob is dirty.
Indeed.
Not yours, Andy.
Yeah.
Specifically.
And we have hobnobs. Have you ever had those? Lovely chocolate bickies.
Oh.
Biscuits.
Ooh.
That's just to get a rude word in an everyday product.
Right. But Bicky, I already like that too. Bicky.
Bicky.
But,
And then-
but that's weird. We would never do that with a candy in America. We wouldn't have a Milky Dick.
No, never.
Not yet.
A Milky Dick. That sounds so gross.
That sounds like a medical problem, yeah.
It does.
Not a candy. I was thinking of Milky Way. Do you guys have Milky Ways here?
No. They may have been available here for a while, but I'm aware of it. I've had it stateside. But basically, it would be in competition with our Mars bar. And that's just a bad way to go. You know, you
yeah.
can't-
But we have Mars bars, don't we?
We have Mars bars. We
Yeah.
used
Right.
to. I think we still do.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them stateside, but then when you've got Hershey's left, right, and centre stateside, sometimes it's difficult. You're blinded by Pennsylvania's finest.
That's right, yeah. My name is John Reynolds, and my favorite words is pal from the thal, which is...
to explain that.
I have to explain, which is one of our favorite shows is The Fall.
Right.
From here with Gillian Anderson. And the serial killer's name is Paul, but they pronounce it pal.
There must have been at least one person who cared whether I lived or died.
Pal, hey pal. And they say the fal. So I would always say to Carmen when we were watching it, are you ready for some more pal from the fal? And that
Maybe it's more like an inside joke.
it's more of an appreciation of the accent
Yeah.
than the words itself.
It's kind of like how on Game of Thrones they're like, Jon Snow.
Yeah, we used to love saying that to each other.
Jon
Jon
Snow.
Snow.
Strike hard and true. Jon Snow.
Do you watch Game of Thrones?
I've only watched the first episode,
Yeah.
and it didn't do it for me. But I've been told to give it a
You have to
chance.
give
Didn't do it
Yeah.
for me either, and I gave it a chance. And,
Right.
and it's great. I
Really?
think you'll enjoy it.
How
yeah.
many episodes does it take in order to
3
have it?
maybe, I think.
Yeah.
Really? So I
You'll
was
never
impatient.
learn all their names.
Right.
Yeah, pretend
But
like...
that's a mark
you
of a
have to
great
do that.
show. If
Yeah.
what show? There's no other show I can think of where I love it and I don't know anybody's name. Still, it's in
Yeah.
the 6th season.
Well, not other shows don't have 800 characters on
Right.
them, so you can memorize the names.
yeah.
So I need not be worried about keeping track of who's who. But also,
No.
it seems that people are getting killed left, right, and centre on that
Yeah.
program as well. So even in the first episode, I found myself bonding with a character, and the next thing you know, 10 minutes in, he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't fall in love with anybody.
But I find that refreshing.
Yeah,
don't you?
it is.
True.
I mean, you grew up with British television, which is the best television made
Really?
in the world.
You're just saying that because you're here.
No. Carmen's heard me
No,
say
he
this.
says that. Yeah.
We just finished Broadchurch
Right.
on Netflix.
We watch a lot of British TV.
And British comedy I loved before I loved American comedy.
Which British
Spike-
comedy?
I mean, I discovered Spike Milligan later in college, but I loved him and Monty Python, of course, and Fawlty Towers and Fry and Laurie and Saunders and French and all those guys.
These are some programs that I didn't even realise had crossed the pond.
Yeah.
Is this
Well,
through BBC
I
America?
don't think Saunders
or...
and French. I
don't know that one.
I could read their sketches before I could see them. I
Right.
think.
How did that come about? Just looking online and...
Yeah, looking online and finding stuff online.
Right.
Usually. And I had friends who had family here.
Right.
In the 80s, and they would come back with. That's how I found out about Asterix. I'm a huge comics person and love Asterix and Obelisk and I got those books. I got the British translations of those books in the 80s. In the early 80s.
Dedication.
Yeah, when I was a kid, yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah.
That's love.
Yeah. Obsession.
An Anglophile.
You
Yeah.
should see our bookcases.
Yeah. It's a comic store.
It's a comics
in our
library.
apartment. Yeah.
And what about yourself, Carmen? Were you an Anglophile in terms of your teen years, student years?
I mean, I grew up on the more of the Spanish side because I grew up in
Right.
Spain, so I had a lot of those. I loved the Spanish comic books, but I love coming out here, so I appreciate the comedy out here a lot. It's my 3rd year in a row where I've done shows out here.
It's quite rare for an American comedian to be visiting these shores as regularly as you have. A lot of Canadians come here, and to be really honest, it's just because it's another place that has the Queen on the money. So, you took Edinburgh by storm.
Oh, thank you.
An absolute highlight. I'm so glad that we came across you at Fast Fringe. Your dry delivery was just the tonic that we needed, and it was just on that particular night you were in an entirely different league to everyone else on the bill. And there were some fine comedians there as well. Are you going to be doing Edinburgh this year?
Not this year, but I do want to go back. I would love to do it next year. I don't know yet when, but definitely I would love. And I'd love John to come because it's so much fun. There's so many great shows. I think I saw a show every day. I saw over 30 shows there. And that helped a lot, too, just to see what's out there.
Absorbing what other people are doing.
Yeah. I came the year before to do some shows, and I went to the Fringe for maybe 3 days because I had a friend out there, and I wanted to check it out. And then once I was there, I was like, I have to do this. This would be so fun. It felt like camp, It's like comedy camp.
And where did you stay when you were there in Edinburgh? Were you with other comedians? Did you have your own digs?
I had a place with 4 other comedians, and at the very, not the very last minute, but 2 months before it started, my friend, someone I met in a writing class, her daughter goes to college there. And she's like, do you just want to have my daughter's 1 bedroom? And I'm like, are you kidding?
Goodness.
So she rented it out to me for so cheap. And I just ended up having my own place. Yeah, it was crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Was it reasonably centrally located?
Very central. It was 2 minutes from the counting house where I performed. And now I'm like, can you just stay in college forever so I can come back and live in your apartment?
Absolutely. Because when Fringe starts, the rates for digs around there for flats, any kind of abode, floor space, go up
so
to
high.
really disgusting levels.
Yeah, I have a feeling my next Fringe, I lucked out on a couple of things that year, and I feel like the next one I'll be crying on the floor somewhere. It'll be hard to find a place to live.
When it comes to finding out about people on the World Wide Web, often the information that one comes across is, shall we say, fabricated. Shall we say, why am I saying shall we say? In your particular case, Carmen, is it true that you started as a flamenco dancer?
I did grow up in Spain. So yeah, I did flamenco. I think I was 5 because we lived there until I was 8. So yeah, so I was between 5 and 7. I used to flamenco dance with my sister, but it wasn't like we were performers, professionals, but we would take classes, and then there would be performances in Sevilla, which is in the south of Spain where the flamenco is so popular. So yeah, that's all true.
Did you ever earn a living for any period of time?
As a dancer?
As a dancer.
Hell no. No.
Right. There is a bio somewhere which kind of implies that that's how you got your start.
What is it? Oh, I wonder if it's just a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. It's my British sensibility. Taking things too seriously. Damn you, internet.
But it's funny. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it took me so long to become a performer. And then I'm like, wait a second. When I was 5, I was a flamenco dancer.
Is it also true that you were pre-med at university?
Yes, that's true.
How long did that last?
Not long at all. I was pre-med in college. Chemistry was my major. And I was pretty smart in high school. And then I went to college and everything was really hard. I went to a really hard school. And I couldn't get good grades. And so I had to change my major. I couldn't be a doctor. It was too hard.
When you enrolled at university, did you have a dream of what kind of doctor you would be?
Orthopedic surgeon was my thing.
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to... I was so into becoming a doctor, and I still think it would be amazing, but I feel like there's a part of me that maybe thought that would make my parents really happy. My mother was a nurse, so sometimes I would go to her hospital and watch operations. She would find a way for me to watch, and then I'd see people's stomachs get cut open, and I guess I was trying to train myself to, and it's weird because now I can't stand the sight of blood. I would make a horrible doctor.
Right.
But...
Did you ever have a period in which you were okay witnessing it? Did the aversion...
Oh, yeah. If it's someone else, it's fine. If it's me, I can't stand it. Yeah.
So in a way, you were practicing aversion therapy quite early on by witnessing your mum's work as a nurse.
Yeah.
And she probably kind of assumed that, this was going to be, a pathway for your medical career.
That's why comedy was such a shock to them, I think, because they thought I was going to be a doctor. And then they went to a stand-up show when I first started, which was horrible. Like, no one showed up.
Right.
And they were like, this is why we paid for your college? So you could ruin our lives?
Comedy is the new medicine, though. It's a fact. It's true.
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah.
I believe that you then went on you changed your degree to psychology.
I changed it a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And then I even actually applied to the FBI. So if you read that, that's true too.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yes.
And
obsessed with Silence of the Lambs, obsessed with all that stuff. Met an FBI agent in Virginia because Quantico, where they train, was near our house. So I met up with an agent and I spoke to him and he's like, you're going to have a very lonely life. And I'm like, well, stand-up is not that different. But and they loved foreign languages and I was fluent in Spanish. And at the time, they just said, when we need Spanish people, we'll contact you. And they did. They're like, we're looking for Spanish people. You can test for the FBI. And I failed the first part of the test.
do you know what you failed
Well,
on?
it was like 6 parts. It's like, physical, exercise. Like you have to run a certain speed and you have to do pull-ups and all that stuff. But that was later. The first part was math and personality. You have to have a specific kind of personality to work for the FBI. And it was either the math or the personality part. They don't tell you. But I took those the same day. And I got back. I got the skinny envelope. When I saw this skinny envelope, I was like, "There's no way." And it was like, "You didn't pass."
Oh no! Well, I mean, it's comedy's benefit that this happened.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd be out there doing FBI related stuff and being lonely.
It would probably be somewhere in Miami. Like they were like, Spanish people go toward the drug thing.
Say hello to my little friend.
Wasn't the fantasy FBI world that I was picturing. Like Jodie Foster's.
Silence of the Lambs really shaped your goals legitimately.
And the X-Files, like all those shows. Yeah, I wanted that. But I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was just. It looked like that was cool more than
True. I'm going to sound like a careers counselor now. My guess is the fact that you did well, presumably in sciences in high school. Your maths ability must be, at a very high standard. So it wasn't that. It was the personality factor.
I think one of the questions I remember very well, and I get kind of stumped when everything looks like I'm really bad at making decisions. First of all, ask this guy, but it would say like there's a project that's due in an hour, and clearly you won't be finished in an hour. Do you A, do as much as you can by yourself? B, ask your coworkers to help you? Or C, tell your boss that you're not going to get this done? With stuff like that where you're like, what would the FBI want? Oh my God, do they want me to work alone or do you want me to communicate to others? So all the answers sound right. And those were the kind of questions they had. And I was like, well, I bet these are all right, but which one are they looking for?
Psychometric testing it's a horrible thing to have to do.
Yeah.
It's you're told to be to approach it in a natural way, but how can you inherently are going to have a bias towards what the organization who are administering the test want.
Yeah.
So you decided to do the FIBI. You went the FBI route, and maybe they wanted you to be more yourself.
I am so glad that none of that stuff worked, honestly, because I love what I do now, but I probably would have just been a horrible FBI agent because I get scared sometimes if I hear a sound.
Was the love of Silence of the Lambs secretly wanting to be an actor?
Maybe, yeah.
Like you would just, it would be cool to do the part of Jodie Foster in that movie rather than
I
be
think
an
so,
FBI?
yeah. I mean, of course, that sounds amazing to just play a detective.
And did the thespian world ever entice you?
That was that's what got me to New York.
Right.
Was I took an acting class in a church in Virginia. It was in the basement of a church, and that particular acting class, I was like, this is amazing. And then I'm like, I quit my banking job and moved to New York. Like stand-up was not a thing. I never even thought about it. It's not something I followed. I moved to New York to become an actress, and then accidentally fell into stand-up.
Right. And well, thank goodness you fell into it. How does one accidentally fall into stand-up?
I went to a show. I lived in the 20s on First Avenue. There's a comedy club that's still there that a couple of friends that I made in New York, we went to see a show. And I honest to God thought those people on stage were just naturally funny. I didn't know they had to like work on their jokes. I thought you just stood up and talked and then you just went on with the rest of your day. And I was so jealous. I was like, that's not fair.
It just happened instantaneously.
Yeah, they were like models. Like they just did their thing and then they just left, you know? And then I learned that there are writing classes that teach you stand up. And I was already a writer. Like I wrote journals, I had diaries. My whole life I've done like, you know, I wrote things down. So I took a class and I used the material that I had in my journals to, and I brought it to class and I found the jokes in those things. And then I just fell in love with it.
So you used your own life experience as the basis for your
Yeah, because I was very
comedy.
frustrated at the time. I wasn't getting any acting work. I'd get like a callback when they ask you back again. And I'm 6 feet tall. And I remember I would get a callback with like a short person, a short guy. And I'm like, I'm not going to get this part. He's 5'2". This is not a comedy, you know? And so I would write, because I would do morning pages, which are these like morning notes that you do. And I would be like, this sucks and all that. So I would talk about being tall and being angry on stage as a comedian. And then, of course, you know, your tragedy is other people's comedy. So people would laugh at my stuff. So I would just talk about like most of my jokes at the beginning were about being tall.
And the weird things that people would ask you.
Yeah. You get all the tall people get the same questions. So you play basketball, all that stuff. We all get asked the same stuff.
It's heightist, really. Let's face it.
But it was a good way to, because I was very shy and I wasn't, when I first took the stand-up class, I was thinking I'll just write for someone who's a comedian. I didn't think I was going to do it because it just looked really scary. And then the teacher was like, you're going to want to, as soon as you write jokes, you're going to want to do them yourself. And I'm like, I don't think so. And then in that first performance, he tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, I want you to try this. And I did, and he was right. He's like, it's way more fun to do your own jokes than to give them to someone else.
Certainly. And talking of writing jokes for other people, John, you spent 6 years writing for Craig Ferguson.
Right.
Who's a bit like the band Bush, a British concern that's hugely popular stateside. It's a dated reference, but work with me. But here, comparatively unknown.
Yeah. Unknown, comparatively
yeah,
unknown. Wow.
He's not very well known in these parts.
Wow.
Was that James Corden, for instance?
He was on popular sitcoms here, right?
Whereas Ferguson did a film about hairdressers,
Right.
and that was about it. And then suddenly I was stateside, and this Scottish chap was doing very, very well.
Yeah.
What was the writing room like? 6 years, a long time to dedicate to
It is,
a program like that.
I probably should have stayed 2 years.
Right.
But that's true about any television show if you're lucky enough to be on a show for that long, because you start to do the same thing over and over again. And especially in topical late night stuff, your Sarah Palin is your Dan Quayle is stupid joke becomes George W. Bush's stupid joke, But on that show, Craig was not a citizen when he started that show, so he was very tentative about really harsh political jokes because he felt weird attacking the country that was basically giving him his bread and butter, and he wasn't a citizen of it. So that was weird because we were doing kind of softball topical jokes, and then we would try to lead into a personal story of his that the writers would just load jokes into. So for the first 2 years, when he wasn't a citizen, it was a lot of that, and then he became a citizen, and then we could kind of unleash a bit more.
The bile could come out.
Yeah, exactly. And he hosted the White House Correspondents' Dinner for George Bush's last year, And so I think he must have become a citizen by then, because that was
certainly.
all ripping him apart.
I've seen some of the footage from that, and
in a soft way still, though. He wasn't as harsh as like what's his face, Stephen Colbert. Do you guys know him?
yes.
And do you know John Oliver?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, like John Oliver, who's not a citizen, has no problem ripping apart our country.
I believe he
soil.
became a U.S. national about 18 months or so ago.
Oh, so he has. Okay.
He has an American wife, and he's legitimately.
Well, he had
a
no
Yank
problem
now.
before that.
Mr. Ferguson, when you were working with him,
Yeah.
did is this around the time that he had a couple of problems?
He had been. I'm trying to think of the code term for it, and I can't. He wasn't drinking anymore, if that's what you mean.
Right.
But I think he stopped that before he even came to the States.
Oh, fair enough. From a timeline point of view, I wasn't sure how
But
that
he used
all
to
worked
talk
out.
openly about his problem
Right.
On the show, and I'm pretty sure he was on his way to. He has a great story about being on his way to kill himself and stopping for a drink at a pub, and then getting so drunk he forgot he was going to go kill himself. And that when he woke up the next day, he went, "What was I doing last night? Oh my God, I was going to kill myself. I have a problem." And then he did what he needed to do to take care of that. So he was always great with me, because I got to perform on the show a lot. So I was writing on that show. The writers wrote everything. They wrote, like, some shows have just the monologue writers and then a separate group that writes the sketches, but we got to do everything. So and it was my first late night show that I'd ever written for. So, which was another reason why I didn't want to leave, because I was getting to do, whatever I wanted, kind of. But then towards the end, one of the things I helped create was he had a robot sidekick that he named Jeff Peterson. That was like a skeleton with a suit, and it was voiced. When I helped create it, it was supposed to be like a 1 week joke where he would have this robot sidekick. He'd push a button under his desk, and a random line would just come out of the robot that we'd pre-record. And then, because he's so good at riffing and ad-libbing, he would just riff off of that, and he loved it. And so he kept that going for about a year, and then he went, "I want the robot to be sentient," and he hired the actor who did the voice, a guy named Josh Robert Thompson, who's a very talented guy, to basically stand off to the side and do the robot live. And once he did that, he didn't want to do sketches anymore. He just wanted to talk to that robot.
Right, so he enjoyed the riffing that much.
Yeah. So there was no, I had kind of done everything I needed to do on that show, and there was nothing left to do. And then he ended up quitting. Like, I left in 2012 or 13, and I think he ended the show in 2014, and that's when Corden came in.
Right. I mean, it sounds like it had run its course as a creative outlet for yourself.
Yeah.
Weirdly, I'm just looking at my DVD box set there.
Oh my gosh. I love that show.
Larry Sanders.
We were just talking about it because there's a great documentary that Judd Apatow did.
I just saw it last week.
What did you think? Carmen hasn't seen it yet, so we can't
yet.
spoil it. But I stayed up all night watching the whole thing.
So did I.
Amazing,
yeah,
right?
I had to watch them back to back.
Incredible.
And the eulogies at the end.
Heartbreaking.
I welled up.
Yeah.
I really, really, really did.
Yeah.
Kevin Nealon was phenomenal.
That guy's genius, too. I love him.
From the real life Craig Ferguson show experience that you had, how close was that to Larry Sanders?
Very close.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You've seen them all?
Yes.
So do you remember they did several episodes like this? Most of the show has a lot of this in it, but they did one particular episode. They may have even titled it The Bubble, where Gary or Larry says, "I want to get to pal around with the staff more." And Rip
Yes.
Torn is like, "You don't want to do that. You want to stay in the bubble." And he's like, "No, I don't. I feel too aloof." And then, of course, he does it. And it's like everybody's like, clamoring for his time. And he's like, "Put me back in the bubble. Put me back in the bubble." And that's very true. Like Craig never came. Craig came out of the bubble before I got there. He had been on about a year before I started. And he palled around with some of the writers. I mean, one of the writers on the show was his best friend, so that stayed continuous. But he was kind of a little bit more open than before I got there. And by the time I got there, he was secured in the bubble. So
right.
My conversations with him and everything were always when we were doing sketches when I was on the floor with him, rehearsing or whatever. But there wasn't much. If I saw him in the hallway, he was always, polite and everything. But he kept his distance.
The only thing about the Larry Sanders Show, which seemed not entirely feasible, is that he appeared to only have a group of 2 or 3 writers. Is that presumably?
And that's called out by Conan O'Brien in the documentary, isn't it? Yeah, and I agree with Conan. I think every writer has the same feeling when they see that show. Is like, that's bullshit.
How large of a team did you have at the Craig Ferguson show?
At its height, it was, I believe, 12 writers, which was still a smaller staff than most of the other shows. Even Conan, who was our competition at the time, I think had 16 writers.
Wow, that sounds like a lot to me.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
But by the end, by the time I left, they were down to like 5. Because Craig was he just wanted to talk to the robot. So all that was left to really write was the monologue.
So I suppose that became a bubble within the bubble.
Yeah, he was the only hermit on television. He didn't give a shit who was watching or listening, which was his appeal. I think a lot of people love him for that reason. He would do like cold opens with like puppets and shit, and get the guest stars to do the other puppet, and never announced that it was the guest star doing it or anything that would draw in people like, oh, I want to see so and so do a cat puppet. He wouldn't even bother. He was just like, I just found these puppets backstage. Let's just do a cold open. Let's make it up as we go. So, which was frustrating for executives at times, but I think the audience, definitely his fans, love it.
I mean, and certainly a really different approach from the slick entities that are Conan and Letterman.
Yeah.
And when Jay Leno was doing the Tonight Show.
And you could keep going because there's about 19 late night talk shows in America right now. Half of them are on Netflix.
Many, yeah.
You guys have a lot too, don't you?
I mean, a handful in comparison, about half that number. I suppose that the ones which are the most successful certainly kind of owe their careers to the Letterman format. Looking at the Graham Norton show, for instance, you can see that he definitely looked across the pond for inspiration. And I think the first chat show host to openly talk about the thievery of Letterman was Jonathan Ross.
But out here, there's more of a panel kind of show, right,
Yes.
than a talk show.
This is what I suppose is the dream for most UK-based comedians, is to enter the panel show world, and there are so many, and usually just with men on the panel, or with a token woman. Shows like Mock the Week, which feels a bit like an old boys club at times, and usually the female comedian that would be on would be aesthetically obvious. That's what most British comedians or comedians based here do in Edinburgh. That's tends to be the dream, is to get one of those juicy gigs.
So you would say that, like, because out in America, it's the, getting on Conan and doing 5 minutes or getting, so that would be their 5 minute like their Conan would be to get on a panel show.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually a good point. Most of the chat shows here, talk shows, don't feature comedians doing their bits.
Oh, okay.
If they're invited onto the show, it's just to be a guest. So somebody like Michael McIntyre, he wouldn't be on the show to show any new material. It'd usually be to promote a tour. But by that stage, the comedian, in the case of Michael McIntyre, somebody that can sell out 12,000 capacity venues. So he would be up there with I don't know, Anthony Banderas or somebody like that, and who would be there advertising some animated production.
That's on the chat show.
Yes, on the chat show.
So what's the difference then with what's a panel show?
Panel show would be where there are a number of comedians who chime in on whatever the format is like. In the case of Mock the Week, It's a topical news program.
Right.
So
Like Chelsea lately.
Yes,
Or
the
Tough
round
Crowd.
table.
Yeah.
The round table.
Yeah. Like Larry, help me.
Larry Wilmore.
Yes, like
had a
Larry
show.
Wilmore.
He
The
used to
nightly
be on
show?
our Daily Show.
Right.
And he got a show called The Nightly Show for about a year or year and a half.
And he'd have comedians on a panel.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and before that was Tough Crowd with your
Yeah.
buddy Colin Quinn. And that was similar to panel shows here, it sounds like.
I'm supposed to the Bill Maher reference point
Right.
would be apt as well.
Right, that's
Yeah.
right, real
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the panel shows don't just cover news, they can cover sport. They also can be hilarious versions of popular game shows.
Uh-huh.
So there's a show here called Countdown, which for the most part, those people at school that have been bullied, they will go on to do great things on Countdown.
That's Jeopardy for us.
And, yeah,
You get Jeopardy over here?
we did for a while. There was a British version. I'm aware of the majesty of Mr. Trebek.
Oh, good. And his mustache.
I've watched it. I enjoyed it. The UK version was terrible. But there's a comedy version of Countdown. And basically, it's for the most part, it's comedians who clearly have imbibed a little bit too much, celebrating their own ignorance and embracing the surreal, and if you will, indicating the fact that they were also those people being bullied, but went on to comedy rather than academic excellence. And but yeah, that becomes certainly a major outlet for comedians here.
My next guest is a very funny comedian. Please welcome Carmen Lynch.
Do you mind me asking, was it through the Ferguson appearance that you met each other?
It's how we reconnected. We actually met each other on a temp job years before that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're friends. And then kind of lost touch with each other. And then she contacted me and said, I'm going through, Facebook keeps us all united.
Indeed.
Even with the Russian interference, we're still united. And she contacted me through Facebook and said, are you, I'm going to be on your show. And I was like, I'm not on the show anymore, but let's get dinner.
Yeah.
And then, and that's how we reconnected. And then I think about a year later, we started dating.
Yeah.
And what was the timeline between the temp job and you appearing on Ferguson?
Oh, geez. Years.
Yeah.
Are we talking double digits years?
12 maybe?
12.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
Yeah.
So it's
Longer than
quite
that,
a significant
Oh,
gap.
yeah.
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 And we were talking off pod that you both recently discovered that your fathers knew each other.
That's right. They
And were both in the Navy
they were
at the same
both
time.
in the same class at officer school in the Navy.
I mean, that was actually through John's brother because we didn't actually talk about it. I think Michael,
One of my brothers figured
was
it out.
like, where was your dad stationed? And I was like, Georgia. And then he started talking about how John's dad was in Georgia. And then we
Yeah.
made the connection. And then my dad found the yearbook and they're both on the same page.
Yeah.
My word. That is an incredible thing.
Yeah, very incredible. And then my father passed away like 13 years ago, but my mother, we kept asking my mother, don't you remember? They came up, Carmen's parents met my mother at Christmas because they came up from Virginia and had Christmas at my mother's in New York. And I've been bugging my mother. You must remember, like, there weren't that many people in the class. And I don't remember them. And so I kept teasing that they probably swapped wives or whatever you did in the late 60s, early 70s, whenever that was. And she doesn't like that either. Maybe because it's true.
Yeah.
It was a different era.
Yeah. It was
you
the
knew
key
my
parties.
parents, but they were like,
but those are the ones. Those are always the ones that do it.
Yeah.
When you were living in Spain as a child, was that while your father was stationed out there?
My dad
Right.
was stationed a couple of places in the States and then Spain.
And then whereabouts in Spain? Was that Rota?
Rota, which is right outside of Sevilla, and then Madrid.
Hence the reason why you speak with a Castilian dialect.
I went to the American School of Madrid, so we learned Spanish. And also my mother's from Spain. My mother always talked to us in Spanish, and my father always talked to us in English.
Right.
So growing up, we didn't know why. We just figured, you look at your mother, and it just comes out in Spanish. And then they did it on purpose, which my sister does to her kids now. She married a man from Spain.
Right.
And, that helped us become bilingual.
¿Dónde estabas ayer noche? ¿Con otra mujer?
Te voy a matar, pero primero me voy a lavar los dientes.
And you've performed as a comedian in Spanish. How have you had to adjust your routine, apart from the obvious of doing it in Spanish? Do the jokes land in the same way from a subject matter point of view?
I would say the first time I did it, the more subtle stuff didn't really land. It's landing more now, especially in Barcelona, because in Barcelona is where I usually do it, because that's where my family lives. So I'll go to Barcelona and I'll do jokes. But I mean, the grammar is it's so different from American. So I really do have to kind of think about it before I go up there. If it's like a complicated joke, because you want to get the punchline right and get that last word that gets the joke. You know, it's like a puzzle. So you're going up there. I feel like it's almost like I'm going up there as a new comedian, but I have all the experience from being an actual comedian. So it's kind of a challenge, but it's fun.
Have you ever actually written a joke in Spanish first and then translated it the other way?
Only recently, because a couple years ago, I went for 6 weeks. So I really got to just kind of stay and soak in the Spanish comedy, and then I just started writing jokes in Spanish. Yeah.
How has that transition been, going from Spanish into English? Have you done that, where the Spanish joke has suddenly made it to a New York audience? Have you done it that way yet?
Yeah, a little bit. Not so much. Because a lot of the stuff I'm doing in Spanish for the first time is like what I've noticed about Spain.
So observations.
Right,
fair enough.
I am really sorry. We're going to disturb this bodacious banter with the semi-welcome return of Posh Pit.
Yeah. I think I might have got whiplash in the Posh Pit.
Oh, it really is so high octane, isn't it, this Posh Pit? No!
It's the semi-welcome return of Posh Pit.
It's been way too long, Dukey.
I mean, it hasn't been something that I've avoided doing. It's just that I haven't been exposed to posh people or myself being out in the elements and doing incongruous things to what you would expect them to be involved with.
I find that hard to believe.
Why is that?
Well, because you know lots of posh people who do things that aren't necessarily thought of as being posh.
I do.
Like, for instance, one of your fellow musicians, he said he had to get up early one Saturday.
As one does.
As one does. And I asked him why, and he said it was because he was going to play squash.
Right.
And that made me laugh a bit, because he gets on stage and does all this sweaty guitar playing stuff. But in this country, particularly squash, or as Americans call it, racquetball, is known to be quite a posh thing. Whereas I think racquetball in the States maybe doesn't have the same kind of connotation.
Really? But can you imagine some snaggletooth person named Cletus in the southern states? There are other parts of the USA saying, well, tomorrow morning I'm going to have to go and play some racquetball.
Well, not necessarily, but wouldn't it be great if they did?
True.
Because that would be the same kind of incongruousness.
But indeed.
So, I think that you know lots of posh people.
I do.
And they do unposh things, and I like that.
Non-conveyor belt kinds of people.
Yes, the same way that I would like it if somebody called Bubba, went off and played, I don't know, golf, say. I think that would be quite funny.
It would be breaking down some boundaries.
It would. I like that. I like people doing incongruous things.
This example for Posh Pit is incongruous, but I'm not necessarily sure how much I like it, but it is appropriate for Posh Pit.
Gotcha.
I went to this place called Reptile. It's in North London, and it's a goth meets punk meets industrial meets metal epicenter. And this was reflected in the bands who were on the bill. So you get an idea for what the audience might be like and what the venue's like.
Yes.
Great place. I went to the bar to get a round in.
Yes.
And this chap orders the following.
Chap? Dukey, that's quite posh in and of itself.
Could I have a pint of Peroni, which is an Italian lager?
Yes.
Featuring a lemonade top.
He used the word featuring.
Featuring.
You know what that makes him?
What?
Makes him a knobhead. A posh knobhead.
You're not wrong there.
All of that banal chat to get to a knob joke. A knob joke. Deary me. Anyway, we return to the interview with Carmen and John. Enjoy.
One thing about looking at your show reel, I wonder if it's something you're conscious of, or if it takes an outsider like me to point it out, is
this
how,
the acting reel?
If it's on YouTube, I've seen it.
Okay. Oh, so then you've seen the videos.
You've seen all.
I'm aware of and have a great affection for quilt women, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. I didn't know this was a meeting for people with problems. I just wanted to talk about quilts.
I love quilt
Huge
women. Those
fan.
are my quilts.
Oh.
So, but I might be a little biased then, but yeah, those
that
are my
pink
quilts.
one's lovely.
Thank
but
you.
I understand you don't have that one anymore.
I just took a big old crap on that new pink quilt. So some other family's gonna get it. I just gave it to a thrift store.
It was given to a thrift shop, wasn't it, with an extra gift?
Yes! You're a true
Very
fan.
good, Andy.
Oh, I
Indeed.
will make another
Wow.
quilt
please.
video when
That's
I
for
get back to
Andy.
the States for you.
Hi, I'm back. Did you miss me and my quilts?
Quilt woman needs her own show.
She does. I agree.
There's
totally
nothing
agree.
wrong with her. She's
Yeah.
fine. Perfectly adjusted.
That's so funny, Andy.
It's absolutely brilliant.
He's a fan.
I know, I love it. Anyway, you had a
fanboy.
question.
And oh yes, the question isn't about the YouTube sketches, clips, if you will, but in your actual stand-up tone. Seeing some of your early television performances stateside, it's as though in the last year or two your delivery has changed.
Oh, really? Tell me.
Yes.
Yes.
And the only way I can describe it, and I'm sure that when I hear this back, I'll think of a better way, is it's like you've taken a little bit of Daria and just added that spice. There is a slightly more knowing, drier delivery, which was a little bit of a shock after we saw you at Fast Fringe. That was our first exposure to you. Hadn't seen any YouTube clips. And we found ourselves doing impressions of you. Pretty good ones, actually.
You're going to have to do it, you know.
Maybe, you can't afford me. And it was weird. We were living with the impressions that we were doing for a couple of days because of the gap between Fast Fringe and seeing you for the first time. And then when we went to see the YouTube footage of your sort of early television appearances, it was just a little bit different. The pitching was a little bit higher. The delivery was faster. I think maybe it's with experience comes a more confident,
Maybe,
I don't
yeah.
need to rush this. And with that, the delivery is different.
Interesting to hear because, you know, I'm in my own head, so I can't see these things as much. But I had a friend tell me recently who's also from back in the temp days, and she's known me forever, and she's like, your comedy has changed. And there is a part of me that could be experience, like you said, or also there is a part of me that I feel like is kind of like coming out of my shell, because I think at the beginning it was very monotone and very deadpan, and it's more playful now as well. So I mean, I think there is an evolving.
It's certainly a bit more edgy now as well.
Yes,
for
it's
want of
definitely
a better word, but edgy comes
it's
to
darker.
mind.
It's darker, a little more edgy, yeah, and that's fun.
And I mean, to be fair though, it's obviously when you're appearing on national television stateside, your edgier material needs to be kept from the cameras because people might be shocked about the morning after pill joke, for instance, and two Belchers and twins and all that, and
I should do that one tonight. I haven't done that one in a while.
it's a good one. It's
Thank
a good
you.
one. It will work here.
Yes.
I come from the musical world, and I've met many a rock wife and many a rock husband. As the comedy equivalent, having a partner, John, who is in comedy, how does it feel to have a lot of relationship-based humour making its way into performances?
Yes, she ruthlessly makes fun of me.
With love.
Yeah, and I love it. I come from an improviser background. Do you guys know the Upright Citizens Brigade?
No.
Theater?
No.
They're big in New York and Los Angeles, and they came from Chicago, which is a hotbed of improv, Second City,
yes.
Improv Olympic, and the Annoyance Theater. So that's what I started that 16 years ago, and I still perform, not as regularly as I used to. So I'm sort of used to being made fun of,
right,
and making fun of others. So I make fun of her all the time.
You can handle it
on stage, you know, and I can totally handle it, and I love it. But Carmen will still ask me, "Is this okay?" And I always try to. I don't want to ever, get in the way, because I know I wouldn't want that, So I say, don't even ask me. Just do whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't
Freedom of
do a
comedy.
joke with my social security number in it. That's about it.
Maybe you could do that one tonight.
But that's all. Yeah. No, I love it. And it's and I get a little attention because she's talking about me,
Yeah, it was funny last night at the store because I was doing jokes about him, and then I just went, "Oh wait, he's here."
Yeah, that got a big laugh too.
I got a big laugh. Yeah.
Thank God you didn't say it. Stand up, and show everybody.
Yeah.
I'm fine if they don't know who I am.
Anonymity is a thing of beauty.
Yes,
and
totally.
And also, your own routine. At times, it's depending upon what you're using. Like at Fast Fringe, it appeared as though you were a single person, talking about entering the dating world. But then when I saw the full-hour show, you then went in deep.
Yeah, I think it's
into the
easier
relationship world.
To start off being single than bringing John up and then saying I'm single. 'Cause there are certain singles jokes that I wanted to keep in there because they're fun to do.
In terms of both of your respective lives, you've gone down acting, comedy, banking, flamenco dancing. And in John's case, you're also a cartoonist, but more about that later. The President's Show. Talk to me.
That's a late night topical comedy show. It's a guy named Anthony Atamianek who is from the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. He does an impression of Donald Trump.
Right.
That caused quite a commotion last year during the presidential race. He was doing live tours around the country with another guy named James Adomian, who I worked with on Ferguson. He's a great comedian and impersonator. He did an amazing George Bush. So we used to have him on with Craig as George Bush, and Craig would interview him. And he does an amazing Bernie Sanders. So he and Anthony did Trump versus Bernie around the states. And from that, Anthony got his own show, which is the President's Show, which is what if Donald Trump, in addition to being president of the United States, hosted his own talk show. And so that's what he does. He sits at the desk at the Oval Office. Mike Pence, which is played by Peter Gross, who's the executive producer as well, and co-showrunner. He sits there as his sidekick, and then they do the desk piece. But it's all through the vision of Trump. And it's on a network called Comedy Central.
And how are you finding that from a creative outlet point of view?
It's amazing because I was kind of burned out on late night. I do a lot of writing for animation as well. So I worked at DreamWorks after Craig for about 3 years on several projects and television shows of theirs. And then moved back. I was in Los Angeles and I moved back to New York to do the President's Show, which is where it's shot. And it was getting to do a late night talk show. You can't do jokes the way you do it on James Corden or Stephen Colbert or Fallon. You have to do it through Trump's voice. So how would he? They knew right away they couldn't have him do monologue jokes because the president has no sense of humor. What he thinks is funny is really not funny. So what they did instead of a monologue, the template every week was he would just hold a press conference. The journalists would ask him questions, and then in giving the answer, that's where we would put the joke. Because he's Trump, he's going to say something that contradicts what's going on. So, for example, when he banned the trans from the military, the journalist said, "You're banning transgenders from the military, but you supported transgenders before you were president, and now you don't. What do you say to people who say you're racist and homophobic?" And he says, I'm offended because I'm trans policy. I went from one policy to another, and that's who I am, and don't offend me like that. So it was a way of doing jokes of where, we didn't want to offend people because Trump is very offensive. So we always tried to find what's the stupid Trump answer that we can do that can point out even more what this guy is doing.
So in a way, you need to have Trump in your head.
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah, it hurts. But I think everybody has him in their head, whether they want it or not. So really anyone could write for the show.
And do you find yourself doing impressions of him in your head while you're writing?
Yeah, but terrible ones.
Bits and bobs.
Yeah,
right.
Terrible. I played Trump once on Ferguson, and it was awful. But I looked great because our makeup department was amazing. But I play him like this. I play him like and it sounds nothing like him. So I still do that when I'm in the office. I'm like, if I go into my Trump, it sounds nothing like the real Trump or what Anthony does.
And the schedule must be pretty full on for a program like that, because presumably it's going to be based on events that have happened in between episodes. How regularly is that show broadcast?
Last year it was weekly.
Right.
This year they're just doing specials, and they may go back to weekly. They may not. It's unclear. The Comedy Central is moving things around. So we just finished a special last week. Which was an hour long, which was Trump holding a telethon to raise money for America, which was based on a 1970s movie starring John Ritter of Three's Company fame. If you guys know him at all,
I'm aware of the program.
Now, but,
yes,
yeah, but he was a great comedic actor, and he did a movie called Americathon that came out in the 70s, and Anthony loves that movie. And he was like, that's exactly what Trump would do now. But of course he would say the money is for America, but then he would pocket it himself, and then that's what comes out in the special.
When the show was weekly, what hours were you doing as a writer?
This was the greatest show I've ever worked for, and continues to be, because I think we're going to have another special coming up next month. All of the people who are in charge have been in the grunt level all the way up to the EP, and have an appreciation for what it's like to have their time wasted writing stuff that the producers know isn't going to make it on the air, but they want to keep you busy. I've been involved with shows that do stuff like that. These guys are incredible. So we always went home by 7 p.m., which is kind of unheard of for some of these shows.
I can imagine.
And this is a weekly show, so a nightly show. Well, even a nightly show, I hear Kimmel, you go pretty late because they'll have you right after the taping. But you would do, like on Ferguson, we'd be home. In the beginning, it would be 10 o'clock at night, which is kind of late. But then the hours started to get better as Craig got more comfortable.
And the robot took over.
And then when the robot took over, it's like
you could leave at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. There was nothing to do. But this show, they know exactly how to get the most out of us during the day, and then we're out by 7. And it's great because it really helps you just decompress and like be recharged for the next day, which you need for that show. Because when it was weekly, because Trump is such a maniac, the news cycle changes on a dime every day, especially last year. So he fired Comey on Thursday Thursday at like noon, and we were taping at 5. So we had to rewrite a ton of stuff for that, and that kind of stuff would happen every week. So you'd have the show ready to go, and then he'd do something in the afternoon. And it would change.
I can see why it's become a special based rather than weekly, because it's just,
right.
he's such a dynamic character,
yes,
to put it lightly.
Yeah.
And all of this amazing writing talent, and you're also an incredible cartoonist. I've just been introduced to your work.
I'm so excited.
Thank you so much.
It reminds me of Shrigley and all. Just I'm absolutely blown away.
The Beano?
There's definitely some Beano in there.
Craig introduced me to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Goodness, you really are an Anglophile.
I know. I love the British,
welcome
man.
to these shores.
I love the British. Do you know Bill Hicks?
Yes.
Yeah, like he loved you guys.
Indeed.
You guys appreciated him.
Yeah, big time. He was loved here. I think he was attracting thousands of people to venues here in London when he was still just doing small clubs stateside.
Yeah.
Did you see the final Letterman appearance that it was initially shelved?
Yes.
And then
when he had
was unearthed.
he had Bill Hicks' mother on as a guest, and then they showed it. Yeah, and it was great. Bert Lahr's son, John Lahr, wrote this great article about Bill Hicks and about that particular Letterman episode getting when he got cut from it, and what a big deal that was, because that really sidetracked his career. which sucks because he died so young.
Yeah.
So.
And then seeing the footage now, it's quite tame in comparison, but obviously with hindsight, everything appears differently and stuff. And he was an incredibly edgy comedian in his own right, and in many ways too far ahead of his time.
Yeah.
Did you go to art school? Are you formally trained in?
No, I taught myself. When I was about 6 or 7, I wanted to be specifically a newspaper comic strip artist. I loved the idea of. I was obsessed with Peanuts and. Which is Charlie Brown and Snoopy. I don't know if they call it Peanuts over here. And Beetle Bailey and Nancy and Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes and Far Side and a strip called Bloom County. And that's all I wanted to do. And I started submitting to this. We had newspaper syndicates over there that get thousands of submissions a year, and they only choose one a year, one or two a year, because that's how hard it was. And I started submitting when I was 8 years old, and I would ink these strips up, and I did that every year until college. And by the end, I was getting handwritten rejection letters. And then by the time I got out of college, they were already calling for the death of newspapers, and it's just been getting worse ever since. So that led, my love of comic strips led me to TV writing, because I was always writing, but I was writing comics. And it led me into acting too, which I also studied for a while, because I wanted in 5th grade. They did "You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown," and I was like, well, I'm the only one who can play Linus. I've read every Linus line. I know, and I got it. I got Linus, and I was like, oh, this is acting. So it opened me up to other things, but I've always still want to be. I'd love to just make my living from comic strips, and you can do that now on the web, but it's a different mindset and a different skill set. You really have to sell merchandise, and you get hats and T-shirts, and I toy with the idea of figuring that stuff out, and Carmen and I talk about that from time to time. But I'm not interested in that. I'm just interested in getting the strips out. So I do the comic now for myself, because having the internet it's just a more fun deadline, because people are going to read it. If I was just drawing for myself, I don't know if I don't know if the incentive would be there. So I'm still sort of doing it for myself, because I know people are going to look at it, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I suppose as well, from an artist's perspective, if you start to explore money-making avenues, it feels like you're cheapening the brand a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But then, what puts food on the table.
Exactly.
It's a balancing act between, monetization of your heart and soul.
Yeah.
But is it...
Wow. You said it in the darkest way possible, Andy. That's good.
But is it a bad thing to have, one of your creations on someone's T-shirt?
I think for the strip I do, it's my strip it has a few recurring characters, but they recur very irregularly. But a comic strip like Calvin and Hobbes, which was famous for the cartoonist Bill Watterson, who created that strip, was famous for not merchandising that strip, and no one could understand it in America, because America's all about making money. And he was like, if I see Calvin and Hobbes on a bumper sticker or a coffee mug, then or worse, a greeting card, then it just looks like they're shilling for those companies. And then when you read the strip, it loses the magic that the strip has. And he's right. He is right about that. When Peanuts did that, Peanuts had the most ridiculous advertising plans. They were advertising MetLife, which is an insurance company in America. And so here's these 5-year-old cartoon characters saying, think about life insurance. That takes you right out of the strip. But to Charles Schultz's credit, he was the first that ever had that kind of expansive merchandising. So he didn't know what he was doing. He was like, well, I want to make money. He gave a lot to charity, but he didn't realize it was too late by the time he was too rich. He was not going to turn that ship around,
Which is understandable. As a pioneer, when was that on US television? When it was 60s?
66, I think, was the first Christmas special.
And that's still early days in terms of cartoons of that nature appearing on television.
Yeah, definitely in prime time. Although the Flintstones might have been around then in prime time. But definitely for a comic strip to
Yes.
make it into prime time, that must have been one of the firsts. Because then they started doing it with other strips to great failure. Like Doonesbury had their own primetime special, and they didn't know. And this tells you the difference in television then and now. That was in 1975, I think, and they only got 20 million viewers. And so they never did another Doonesbury again. Now, 20 million viewers today would be they would give them an open-ended contract. But back then, that was considered because there was only 3 networks, and there was no internet, there was no cable.
It was too small a piece of the pie then. But it just shows you how. I mean, there are parallels with the music industry. If you look at how many units you need to shift to get into the chart. It used to be, you'd need to sell millions in order to get into the top 20, and now it's minuscule.
Yeah.
Because of the way that people engage with the internet, it's altered the way that we take stuff in.
Yeah, yeah.
But in a way, though, it gives complete freedom as well, which it sounds like you've embraced.
Yes.
From an artistic point of view.
Yeah.
You still have fans and people who regularly visit. Your website, and that's a thing of beauty.
I love it. I love it. The other thing of beauty is technology in terms of drawing. I'm an okay drawer. What I couldn't stand was the actual inking with the nibs. I got okay at it as time went on, but when the what's called the Wacom Cintiq, which is these tablets that you can draw on, these computer tablets that you draw directly onto the screen, when these things came around and got perfected, that's when I went, all right, I'm going to go back into this whole hog, because there's no ink spilling. It's controlled pen work that still looks like actual pen work, like actual nibs and stuff that we used to use back in the day. And that was it. That combination of social media and the tablet technology was what made me decide I have to do this again while this is happening right now. It's like, because I buy comics constantly, and I don't buy superhero stuff. I never really got into superhero comics. I buy a lot of newspaper comic strip collections and indie graphic novels and a lot of that stuff. And as Carmen will attest to, and as we've said before, like it's endless. So I want to now, now that it's easier for me to contribute, then people have to deal with me and my stupid comics now, because it's just so much easier, and also to get it out there.
And there must be a new generation of people who are not using nibs at all.
Don't even know what paper is. Yeah. There is a whole generation. Yeah, the paperless generation.
No nibs for me.
Yeah.
Damn the nibs. For people who are listening to the podcast to be able to engage with your artwork, what are the website details?
Oh, okay. Well, the web comic is called A Fistful of Babies, and the website is afistfulofbabies.com, and I'm also on Instagram at A Fistful of Babies, and I'm on Twitter at Rentoons, which is the first 4 letters of my last name, REYNTOONS. That's on Twitter at Rentoons, and then the Instagram and the website. Yeah.
As a cartoonist, is the ultimate dream, apart from producing stuff that you love and being able to do it whilst keeping the bailiffs at bay and the food on the table, is it to do something like Ghost World, where you have something that's
yes, you know that one.
I love it.
Oh, it's so good.
Love the strip and love the film.
Yeah. And do you keep up with Dan Clowes? Have you read Patience?
No,
Patience is his latest. It's amazing. Carmen got about 6 pages in and then put it down, but I think you'll love it, Andy. I think you'll love it if you love Ghost World.
Ghost World's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. He's incredible, Dan Clowes. Yeah.
Whatever happened to Thora Birch? That's
yeah. Oh, it's sad, isn't it? I don't know. That's a great question.
I mean, in that film, you got Scarlett Johansson, who, when I saw the film, thought, oh, aesthetically pleasing, bit wooden. Thora Birch, that's a career to be reckoned with.
Yes.
Totally the opposite.
And I think the media felt that way too about her. And then she's just disappeared. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a shame.
I'm going to Google her the second we're done here, actually, because that's a great question.
Sounds like a documentary. Whatever happened to Thora Birch? And he's somebody who talks like this. Thora Birch was a huge Hollywood star. Then it all ended. I have no idea why I talk like this, but it seems to work well for a documentary.
That's how we all talk.
Yeah, it's true.
When you were working in the financial world, in banking, what was your job there?
Well, just to be clear, I wasn't an investment banker because I think when people hear banking, they think I was like in this high class,
buy, sell,
very, like I'm getting paid all this money. But I started in a bank in Virginia, and then when I moved to New York, I was temping for Goldman Sachs, so I wasn't actually a banker, but I did with John work with bankers on their like presentations and all that stuff. But you know, it's funny. I tried so hard to fit into the regular world of office and finance and cubicles and all that stuff. And I never found a place. And then I worked in insurance for a while and I never really found anything that I liked. And of course, now I look back and I'm like, thank God, because then I wouldn't be doing what I do. But it was all just, you know, to pay the rent and stuff. It was never anything I loved.
When you were starting in comedy, did you have to do, I believe it's called barking?
Yes, barking.
Yes. Did you do that?
Or flyering. Yeah, you stand outside and you hand out flyers. And, you know, you have to because that's how you get spots. You know, when I was doing it, I don't think they fly or bark so much now. But when I was doing it, it was you could bring people. So I would do a lot of shows where you'd get 5 minutes if you brought 3 people.
Right.
And 3 is pretty easy to get. There were shows where you had to bring 10 people, but then you'd get 10 minutes. And that was more stressful than getting up there to do stand-up. You'd be like, I have 4 people in the audience. Are they still going to let me go up? So that was just nerve-wracking. And then when I ran out of friends or when I got sick of doing that, I would go back to the barking. And I would just stand out there and flyer.
And how long would you have to do that for on a given day?
It depends. Like some places, they'd make you do it for an hour. Some, they would make you do it for 2 if you were doing 2 shows.
Right.
But usually an hour before. And one time we got busted because a friend of mine and I, it was cold and rainy, and we went inside to like McDonald's or something, and the booker just walked right in.
That's a big no-no.
Oh dear!
And they were like, "Get out there!" But yeah, so a lot of comedy clubs hire street teams, like professional flyering people.
Right.
So I think the comics who do it now have it a little easier, and there are a lot of shows now that they're in a random bar in the back room and stuff. And we had some of those, but now there's just comedy everywhere because there's a lot more comedians and everything. So I don't think they do that as much.
Do you ever do the multiple venues in a night approach?
Yes.
Caroline's 1 minute and
yes.
Another place. And what's the most that you've done in one night?
The most I've done, I think, was 7 or 8
Goodness.
in one night. But it all depends on location. Like,
right.
Like now I usually do maybe 3 or 4 a night. 3 is my favorite because after 4 you're just like, I don't know if I'm actually learning something or repeating jokes I already know work or whatever. So 3 for me is like a perfect night. But there used to be clubs that were so close to each other that you could literally go back and forth. Or one club had an upstairs and a downstairs, and so I would get 5 done right there.
Goodness.
And a lot of these places didn't pay, but it doesn't matter, you know. Like, especially when they don't pay, you're like, I want to get up as much as possible. You know, the paying ones are great too, but you know, it was all about just getting that new material up there. And now I do a couple of rooms where I just do new material. So I just kind of spread it out more, and I'm gone a lot now. I'm at the airport. I'm flying all the time and I'm gone. So, yeah, but at a certain point, if you get up 5, 6, 7 times a night, especially at the beginning, I think that's how you really find your voice and your confidence and stuff. And it's important.
What a perfect litmus test it is for material. You know, you're in front of different sets of strangers experiencing different levels of inebriation throughout the evening. Presumably, 1 in the morning audiences can be different than 8 p.m.
And especially back then, like doing a show, and I wasn't as at the beginning. I was very scared to try new stuff. Like if something worked, I would do that joke for a long time. Whereas now I don't care if nobody I mean, of course, we all want everyone to laugh, but I'm like, fuck you. I'm gonna make this work my way. You build confidence, so you don't take their lack of laughter as personally. But at the beginning, you could, I could do a show, do 7 minutes that killed, feel like a star in year one, and then go to another room and none of it worked, and then feel like, what happened? I did the same material, So, but now I think it's just all about just always throwing new stuff in and keeping it fresh for me.
Certainly. Yeah. You don't want to grow out of love with your own material.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it feels like you're a part of a conveyor belt of your own creation.
Yes.
The one thing that I loved about your 1 hour show in Edinburgh is that it was an hour-long show, whereas for a lot of comedians that I saw, and I'm going to be cruel here, often it'll be half an hour of material that they've carefully honed, and over-reliance on crowd work and riffing, which in Edinburgh and for a new performer that, for us as audience members, seemed a bit lazy. And yours is just, it was, the likability factor, but it was an hour of entertainment, which at Edinburgh is not necessarily a guarantee. Often it'll be half an hour of entertainment in an hour-long show.
Well, I don't know how, because I know a lot of people who do that show every year, which is impressive, because I'm like, I'm not ready to do that again, so the fact that they're even doing it every year, I'm like, well, of course I'm there, because I thought about that because people told me that. I'm like, well, of course there's riffing and stuff, because you've only had a year to write this. Like, how
true, how
do you come up with all that stuff? But I heard that was true. Well, also in the States, headlining is 45 minutes to an hour, whereas here I think it's like 20 minutes. Everybody gets 20 minutes. So, to do an hour is just like a regular thing out there.
And how do you like Brits as an audience?
I think they're great. I think they appreciate the darker, sketchier stuff that we do back home as well. And I love that. And I love coming. I mean, I come back every year because I love it.
Where can people find out about the glories of your good self, Carmen?
Well, the main reason I'm out here, besides like all the shows I'm doing, but I'm doing an hour at the Bill Murray, which is at the Angel Comedy Club on May 2nd at 6:45. So I would love for everyone, all of your listeners. And I listed everything on CarmenLynch.com. But on Twitter, I'm at Lynch Carmen. And on Instagram, I'm at Lynch Comic. But it's all there on CarmenLynch.com, all those shows for the UK.
And final question, Carmen. What is the meaning of life? No.
42 is the British answer.
Yes,
that, right?
This is true.
Yeah.
Hitchhiker's Guide. I saw the short film that Chloe Savini directed of your good self. How accurate of a portrayal is that for an average night in which you're out and about, soaking in the city sights and sounds?
I would never wear I never wear Miu Miu outfits. Those are so expensive, as John knows.
Yeah.
I got to keep a couple of things.
Yeah. I had to try it on. It was so expensive.
And the price was insane.
Yeah.
So that's not part of my regular life, unfortunately. And a lot of the looking in the mirror like that.
Yeah, it didn't seem very you.
I mean,
it's beautifully filmed.
It's a fashion film, so it's really, it's a portrayal of stand-up, but it's also a portrayal of fashion and Miu Miu, who produced the movie. I
hope more people see that and think like Andy does, that is actually how your life is.
Yes.
It's a slice of Carmen's life.
A slice of just staring into my mirror image with a really expensive outfit on.
Yes, it's so funny.
With all respect due to Chloe, I saw a clip in which she was extolling the virtues of your good self and the reason why she wanted to feature you in a short film. All admirable, lovely things. Have you seen this interview footage?
About, yeah.
It's really, really, really lovely.
Yeah.
And I saw that interview that she did before I saw the actual film. And Oh, I hate to say this. I was a little bit disappointed because I thought she got you. This is an actress that was in Kids, and it was quite an edgy concern.
Yeah.
She was involved with Vince Gallo.
Yeah.
She had to be in, was it Brown Bunny?
Yeah. She was in Brown Bunny.
Oh, my word.
Right. And Brown Bunny was in her.
Yes, there's... Damn, you got there before I did. I was
so
thinking
did the Brown Bunny.
So you would think we're coming from that very, very kind of edgy world and from edgy films, and seemingly getting you that a bit of truth would seep its way into the film. And again, it's beautifully filmed, but it didn't seem very you. Even though I'd only met you briefly after one of your shows, you get an idea for what a person is like.
Yeah.
And this just seemed to be a whole different kind of person.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I realised it need not be exactly about you. You were playing a role.
Yeah.
Right.
But I was hoping it was going to be a bit
like edgier, kind of.
Yeah, but also maybe, if you will, I've been on the road. I know what it's like. Often you're kind of sprawled out watching bad television or searching for food that doesn't suck.
Right.
Rather than I'm having a moment in which my mortality is being questioned. Oh, here I am in this club. Those people are so young. I was once young. I better stare at myself in the mirror just to remind myself of nature taking its toll on me.
That's what I love about it, though, because it is so not what is real. Maybe that's why she wanted to. I can't speak for her, but maybe that's why she wanted to do it, because she's so used to coming at things from gritty reality. This is sort of like a weird, heightened truth. Maybe
a parallel universe.
Yeah. And I liked that. The cool thing was too is that she and I went over my jokes, and together we picked. She was like, what jokes would you be interested in sharing to the world with this? And then she kind of picked the ones she liked. And she did pick the kind of the darker ones about Plan B and all that stuff. So that was kind of cool that at least that part of it was dark. But but the skirts and all that.
Yeah, in fact, all your stand-up, I think, in that short is
pretty
totally
dark.
real.
Yeah.
Like based from reality.
Yeah.
Though. I mean, she knows about Plan B because of me. So that came from a truth. That totally came from a truth. Yeah, and purchase. So that was the gritty truth. Was your stand up, and then everything around it was her heightened glitzy take.
Yeah.
It was filmed in Portland. Is that right?
Portland. Yep.
Right. Yeah, maybe Portland, in her mind, brought out the inner vacuousness that you don't really seem to have at all. But I mean, it is a film. It's not a documentary. It's not so.
No.
And it's beautifully shot.
But
Chloe
I like
did
that
a lovely
people
job.
might think it's a documentary, like you were saying. I
love the idea of being able to kind of embrace the mundane and to get a slice of life of what it's like to be in that very solitary world in between shows. There's no glamour. You have yourself for company. A little bit of that made it into the film, but not as much as
the deli scene is a little like that, when the guys are calling you Stretch.
Yeah.
They're calling you nicknames from the 40s.
Yeah.
For being tall. Hey, Stretch.
Come on, Sticks.
Yeah, Sticks. He calls you that too?
Both,
I'm gonna give you a knuckle sandwich if you don't change your ways there, you little wiseacre. Apologies once again, not only for that dodgy 1940s gangster accent, but also for disturbing this bodacious banter. Now, we find out what's happening with our very own Slutty Sue.
Let's see what Slutty Sue is doing in her house. In her house.
I like to clean.
Let's see what Slutty Sue is doing in her house. In her house.
I like Charlie Sheen.
Let's see what Slutty Sue is doing in her house. In her house.
Are you done with those mugs?
To a mere pedestrian or uninitiated local, Penge may appear to be an unremarkable suburb of London. Neither city nor country, neither posh nor destitute. But in this quiet enclave, in the southeastern quarter of our nation's capital is an Art Deco semi-detached house owned and occupied by a North American transplant to Blighty named Slutty Sue. She likes to clean. I popped into Slutty Sue's pristine abode and asked, Slutty Sue, what have you been up to?
It's spring cleaning time, and my vicar asked me to give him a hand at his church because his apse has got all dirty. But when we started, I told him it would be best to work from the outside in, because the brass on his door was all tarnished from not being given a seeing to all winter. So this week, Dukey, I've been mostly polishing my vicar's rusty knob.
What is it with all the knob jokes?
One thing just dawned on me. John Hastings sat on this very sofa and we discussed his experience of being 6'4", yet having been a premature baby, being a preemie.
Yeah.
And how people didn't believe him. And this, for reasons I have no idea, is a really tenuous link to your good self being a SCO.
Yeah.
As around the houses to get the SCO, to get the SCO-ness in there. How intensely was your life affected by that condition?
Well, I clearly had no idea that I was going to have scoliosis because in my head I just pictured, people hunched over have scoliosis. So when I was diagnosed with it in school, I was like, what? And then on top of that, when they were like, you need to wear a brace every day and every night at school, that really affected me because that was not something I shared with anybody. So that was, like a deep, dark, in my head, it was like a deep, dark secret. And I will be made fun of or whatever. So I was obsessed with not letting anyone know about it. So that was a big, that was a huge, and I think in a way that's what really brought me to stand up because I did shut myself down for so long that when I discovered speaking in public, I'm like, this feels amazing. So I don't know if that would have happened if I had just kind of not gone that way.
A means of venting past concerns, your things which definitely kind of shaped you during your formative years. It must have been really, really tricky. And did you the brace? Is this something that you were able to wear without other people knowing, or?
I wore like heavy sweaters and loose shirts and stuff like that. But if you bumped into me, you definitely would feel it.
Right.
Yeah. Like some people tapped me on the back, and I had no idea they were behind me.
Clunk.
Until they were like, boom. Yeah.
But unless people did that, they might not have known. They just thought you had a penchant for baggy jumpers.
For baggy clothes. Or I remember certain times I would walk in the back, and so I wouldn't have anyone behind me. I would always sit in the back of the class, like stuff like that. Yeah, all the time.
Oh, goodness.
And I did a one-person show about it because it was just, for me, it was so tragic. But when I talked about it in this show, people would laugh, and I get it. Like I would drop things on the floor and just let them be on the floor because I'm like, I'm not picking that up. I can't.
Yeah, people think, oh, what a diva. Drop stuff, and suddenly it's Mariah Carey's in the house.
Yeah, they're like, I'll take that brand new pen.
Is that a Parker pen? Don't mind if I do. Listen, guys, thanks so much for coming here to the Dukey Radio Show studios. I'm clearly aware that Tempest is fidgeting, and Lynch, you've got a gig to do.
It's been awesome.
Oh,
You're,
thank you.
Amazing at this.
You're so good
thank
at
you.
this.
Thank you. Well, that is indeed your lot. Carmen Lynch and John Reynolds were fab guests, great company. I could have chatted with them all day, all night, all week, all month, all year, decades even. I might be labouring this point a little bit. In fact, I better stop now, or it might seem a little bit stalkery. Is that a word? Well, it is now. You've been listening to an interview with Carmen Lynch and John Reynolds. My name is Dukey, and I've been your host. Until next time, may the worst of tomorrow be the best of yesterday. Now it's time for me to go and pop my weasel. Thanks for listening.
Half a pound of tuppenny rice, half a pound of treacle. That's the way the money goes. Pop goes the weasel.
Facebook. Click on your mouse to our Facebook page. Facebook. It's easy to find, it will not take an age. Facebook. www.facebook.com/. The Dukey Radio Show, the Dukey Radio Show. The thin white Dukey is right. Click your way to the Dukey Radio Show Facebook page. www.facebook.com/The Dukey Radio Show. The Dukey Radio Show, the Dukey Radio Show.